Adam Taxin here in Wesson, Mississippi, I-55 North. I was on I-55 North yesterday for the sunset report. There should have been a sunrise report, but I was having technical difficulties, as I am right now with my new mic. It's funny how these things work. The technology's there to do this, but I'm not particularly good with that. Can't get the mic to work. My tripod came apart. I'm doing this just from the internal mic now. But look, it's taken long enough to give you the content that I would have had at the sunrise report today, but because of the Wi-Fi or bandwidth issues in Macomb, Mississippi. But let's get started, and we're gonna. Actually, isn't this a great site to discuss the Oscars? None of that Hollywood glamour, or use a more pejorative term. I'm just at a rest stop in Mississippi, and I can probably give you better content in a lot of ways that they can. So let's start talking about what we would have talked about this morning had I gotten the act together. And bear with me, I'm appreciative that you're sitting here and still watching these, even though there obviously are things to work out. Hopefully you find some of the things I do compelling. Okay, so I am now a little bit south of Jackson, Mississippi. Again, what better place could there be for a summary of last night's Oscar? Okay, I like the hashtag, which I came up with, and probably thousands of other people did because it's not that clever. Oscars, so what? I imagine that's the feeling a lot of you have. I didn't watch a minute of it. I got my information from a combination of, well, why I didn't watch it was a combination of not caring, not seeing the movies, having other things to do, and just being tired. You know, I've missed World Series games for that reason. But again, why should that mean I can't cover it? The clips are up, not that I watched too many of them. I just read what people said. People who have a similar viewpoint as I do said. And I see a lot of people are joining, more than usual. A lot of people with strong opinions, and I will comment on them. I'm not necessarily going to make a habit of that, especially because I'm not necessarily going to have the camera as close to me as it is, the phone camera as it is now. But Larry Love, Rachel Pollack-Werman, that means you, Sandra Amaker-Peters, Lori Averick, but I'm going to have Lori Averick, a comment from her in a bit, so I already will get that. But as for the mentality of watching the Oscars, I thought it was summarized well by Kenneth Hill. He is the guy behind Black and Conservative in America, his Facebook page, his Facebook group. He wrote this to me, and I think it sums up what a lot of us are feeling. Well, I just have a few thoughts for your show in the morning. Now the afternoon. First, the Oscars. I did not watch this anti-Trump fest. I only know what is being said from media reports, and as I figured, it is all anti-Trump, anti-America, and totally politically correct. Last year, these liberals were stunned at being called racist because no person of color won an award. Well, now they, in my opinion, are being patronizing by giving awards to persons of color, so they will not be called racist. And I see a comment from Ron Corey. You comment here, I'm going to break in immediately. You wrote that, Ron, yeah, you're glad Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis won for Moonlighting. We'll get to that in a minute. Kenneth Hill also wrote that to me. I think, I may be wrong, but I think he wrote that before knowing that Moonlight, which is black-oriented and gay-oriented, and actually had a Muslim actor, so it really hit the trifecta there, that it would get Best Picture and that blacks would get Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress. But Kenneth continues, I see where Kimmel opened the show with the expected Trump is racist jab. He writes that he can't take much more of this left-wing insanity, that people are comparing themselves to French resistance fighters. They've gone insane with hate. How long can they keep that insanity up? From my standpoint, looking back to a more golden era in Hollywood, what occurs to me, ever see that movie Dr. Zhivago? With Julie Christie, who I saw is doing some liberal protests of some sort. But it's a great movie nevertheless, and she was there largely because of her beauty. There's a scene toward the beginning in which, not to glamorize the protesters outside, but it's a great scene. I mean, they were communists, or they were, you know, not as bad as the people now, because communism had 100 million fewer deaths on its hands at that point. But there were people outside, in St. Petersburg, I believe it was, and they're protesting and protesting and protesting. Precursor of what we see now, but it was a more innocent age. That was pre-Stalin. And yet they're having this glamorous party inside. To me, that, not a perfect analogy, is what you see with Hollywood today. It's as if they're oblivious, or they just don't care what so much of the country thinks. Even so many of the Democrats. want nothing to do with them. It's not the glamorous era of Hanukkah anymore. It's over. And to me, you know, it's not even a cultural reference point anymore. You think about the days, and that's true for TV too. You could talk about the last All in the Family episode. You could talk about certain movies, E.T. Phone Home, but who can talk about the movies today that are big or at least heavily awarded? You can't. I mean, you can talk about Cooper Loves Ice Cream or some dog video that's gone very viral more readily than you can talk about popular movies. You know the one. Daisy gets hers first because Cooper eats his too fast. I mean, it's like people probably are going to talk more this week about the tigers that knocked the drone out of the sky in China. By the way, you should. They tried to eat it, too. You should Google that if you haven't seen it yet. Tiger knocks drone out of sky, China. But to me, Trump's tweet last night really captures the gist of everything. He tweeted, "This is amateur night." Who the hell is in charge of this production? And there are a few things that he may have been referring to there. But let me get to other headlines that I think summed it up very well, as headlines should sum things up very well. Drudge's was sermons from La La Land. And Gateway Pundit, who makes frequent posts about certain topics if they're relevant, you know, he'll do 5 different posts about a single Trump speech or an event. But he had exactly one until this morning. He did have another one today. Maybe Jim Hoff, the Gateway Pundit, went to bed. I don't know. But he had one about this. Oscars open with President Trump is a racist joke. Joke in quotes. Then, of course, as you probably know by now, it's not like I'm breaking the news. The wrong Best Picture was announced. And this, of course, was a moment out of the 2015 Miss Universe pageant hosted by Steve Harvey. Now, I know a lot of people were boycotting it, and it's a shame in a way that it was a shame for people who were boycotting the Super Bowl, but in a different way, because you really would have liked to see that failure when Warren Beatty announced the wrong Best Picture winner. It's not Best Editing or some smaller category. Best Picture. He got it wrong. How can that happen? Super Bowl, you know, people boycotted it, and I think a lot of them regretted it because it was such a great game, such a great Tom Brady comeback in that one. So it's a different reason you may have regretted it. You would have wanted to see this train wreck. I would have wanted to see it. Now, Neil Patrick Harris, who certainly is not one of us, but he tweeted it was a trans envelope. Good joke there, I think. Early in their day, by the way, as TMZ reported, a stage prop coming down while Jimmy Kimmel was rehearsing. The host, he is actually, for a host, he's pretty low rated compared to the other shows going on at the time. Certainly no Johnny Carson, who I believed hosted the Oscars as well. It occurred at around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time yesterday, just when Jimmy Kimmel was working out a skit but was off stage. Good tweet from Mike Cernovich, sort of a non sequitur, but also on the Oscars. He tweeted $100,000 gift bags at #Oscars, more than most families earn in a year. Lecture us more, Hollywood. Now, the winners you probably heard, but I'll go through them quickly, of the major categories. Best Picture was something called Moonlight, very politically correct, black-oriented, a gay theme. I guess a young black man coming to terms with his gayness. What would be better? I know what would be better if they had a Muslim actor in it. And they did, and he won Best Supporting Actor. Hey, trifecta. In a few years, it'll have to include someone who's transgender, but we're not probably at that point yet. Emma Stone, she won Best Actress. She's liberal, blah, blah, blah. She was in that lame I Will Survive video. I didn't see La La Land. I haven't been to a movie theater probably in a few years. I don't know if I've seen a movie that's even come out in the last 3 years. Just the way I am. I don't think I'm missing too much, am I? She was in La La Land, which apparently is good and doesn't have that much of a political agenda from all I gather. Casey Affleck, Manchester by the Sea, a very wrought, sad movie. He won Best Actor. He's a liberal who had sexual allegations against him, but he's a liberal, so it's not a big deal. Ben Affleck's brother, Mahershala Ali, won Best Supporting Actor in a black and gay themed movie, and you know, he happens to be Muslim too, so what more could you want? Comment from Deb Nugent-Stickley. I'm going to read this, haven't even seen it yet. Hollywood has become an arm of the DNC and are SJW's social justice warriors now. They offer no alternatives to what they complain about, and let's be honest, there are very few good actors any longer. Add to that, and she cuts off there. There are good actors, but the material to work with isn't that worthwhile. Viola Davis won Best Supporting Actress for Fences. That's a movie adaptation. I think Denzel Washington was behind it. It's probably not too politically correct. He's pretty solid. Fences and August Wilson play about, I guess, being black in the 40s or 50s, involving a baseball player. Now, the big one people are talking about is the best foreign language film. That was The Salesman in Persian. A guy named Asghar Farhadi, not Oscar, Asghar or something like that, Farhadi. It's a story of a young couple named Imad and Rana. They're putting on a production in Iran of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. Would that really happen? Arthur Miller's a Jew. Can you do something like that? Well, actually, no, maybe not. Maybe he wasn't a pro-Israel Jew. Iran's kind of weird because Jews do live there without that much high-level persecution, low-level persecution. As far as I understand, just they can't be pro-Israel. So maybe they would do Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman in Iran. But the personal relationship of these two, most of you aren't going to see it, neither will I. Most likely it suffers after they move into an apartment that was previously where a prostitute entertained her clients. Hacksaw Ridge, that's one Rush Limbaugh, a lot of conservatives talked about his liking. Supposedly great, about a conscientious objector who becomes a hero in the Civil War. It had 6 nominations, didn't get any major ones, but it did win Best Sound Mixing and Best Film Editing, so even though I wasn't paying attention, I guess that would have been the one I was rooting for, because I can't stand what a lot of liberal Jews have done as far as Mel Gibson is concerned. People who aren't going to speak up for Israel, but they're so proudly against Mel Gibson, so I always root for him. I made a point to see, what was his controversial movie? Oh man, I can't even remember the name, but at least I'm not Christian for forgetting it. What was it called? I went to see it the night it came out, just to prove a point, because people didn't want me to, and I did it on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. But there were 4 movies, and that was one of them. Hacksaw Ridge won 2 multiple awards. 4 won multiple. That and Manchester by the Sea won 2. Moonlight won 3, and La La Land won 6. Now, the politics. Let's talk about that. Yeah, I mentioned Oscars opened with a racist so-called joke. It took the Academy Awards less than 5 minutes to start with the anti-Trump stuff. This is what Jimmy Kimmel said to get the ball rolling. Maybe this is not a popular thing to say, but I want to say thank you to President Trump. I mean, remember last year when it seems like the Oscars were racist as opposed to Trump, who's so much more racist. Some coverage from the Bradenton Herald. They had a good... I was in Bradenton last week, but this is just what came up through Drudge. Good summary of the politics. Jimmy Kimmel started monologue. They talked about that the Oscars were being broadcast now around the world to 200 countries that hate us, that now hate us. Of course, that's perpetrating the myth, and also the myth that they loved us because of Barack Obama. He was so well loved. Just look at what they think of him in Egypt. He also joked, here in Hollywood, we don't discriminate based on what country you're from. Again, contrast to Trump. We discriminate based on your age and weight. Ha 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 ha. No, as I mentioned, Mahershala Ali got the work for his best supporting best supporting actor Oscar. His role in Moonlight, which is gay and black theme, only made $28 million, which is not that much for a big movie, though I think it had a low budget as well. First Muslim ever to win an Academy Award, so predictably enough, he kept it buttoned up and just very classy. Of course, they know the PR, and that's what he did. No politics in that one. Now, here's the headline from the Bradenton Herald. I think it was the Bradenton paper. Oscars audience gives rousing ovation to boycotting Iranian filmmaker who belittles the inhumane U.S. Again, it's Asghar Farhadi. He wasn't there to accept it. He was boycotting the ceremony, which I guess it means he could have come if he wanted to protest Trump's controversial executive order, which was put in place before Trump, of course. He just started enforcing it. It barred residents from 7 terrorist-producing countries, 7, which happen to be Muslim majority. There are a lot more Muslim majority countries than that. But it's only 7 that are barred from entering the U.S. temporarily. He wrote in a statement, he had a woman who, an Iranian American, even though her family seemed to want to leave Iran when, it became a really Muslim country after they deposed the Shah, but she's the first, female tourist in space and the first Iranian American, or first Iranian of any descent in space. But he wrote, and she read, "I am sorry, I am not with you tonight." My absence is out of respect for the people of my country and those of 6 other nations who have been disrespected by the inhumane law that bans entry of immigrants to the U.S. And of course he just says immigrants, doesn't specify which ones. And he continues, dividing the world into the us and our enemies categories creates to the... let me try that again. Dividing the world into the us and our enemies categories creates fear. Now, of course, his country, Iran, would never do something like that, and would never, like a lot of Muslim countries, ban people from coming in by being Jewish or Israeli or even having gone to Israel. But no, Hollywood doesn't want to talk about that. So some tweets related to the very sanctimonious Iranian director, Charlie Kirk. In Iran, they kill people for being gay. But you go ahead and lecture us on our government. More from Sandra Amaker-Peters. I'm really prioritizing those who write in now, except I can only see the first few lines. So keep it short. Adam, you were in my part of the country where we use our common sense, and we are very honorable and loyal. Well, yeah, but I'm also leaving your part of the country because the pollen's too high right now. So I'm sure you'll find many Trump lovers, mainly because we love our country. And that's all I can read right now. Read the rest in the comment section. But okay, more tweets. Lauren Cooley. We give an Iranian filmmaker an award, and he writes us a lecture on our government? How about he go lecture his own Iranian leaders? Well, he wouldn't be directing too many more movies if he did that. More politics. Before presenting the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, presenter and actor Gael Garcia Bernal, who's from Mexico, spoke against Trump's proposed border wall as a Mexican, as a Latin American, as a migrant worker, as a human being. This was a guy, interestingly enough, with the black and gay coming of age theme. The first movie I think I saw him in, maybe where he made his name, was something called Y Tu Mama Tambien. 2 friends on the road, they pick up a lonely wife, and it ends with the 2 guys, including Gael Garcia Bernal, making out and maybe having sex with each other. So that's appropriate, giving what won Best Picture. But he continued, I am against any form of wall that wants to separate us. Needless to say, he's not speaking out against the big sign on the highway in Saudi Arabia that says which direction Mecca is and reminds people only Muslims can enter there. People seem to like something I posted on Facebook following the tweets early last night, not watching the Oscars, but who needs to? I wrote this and put it on Facebook, got a lot of likes. Also on Rush Limbaugh unofficial fan page, or Rush Limbaugh unofficial fan group, which is mine. And that's where I'm putting more of my political stuff. I'm putting less political stuff that doesn't involve me on my Facebook page. So I'm toning it down unless I'm in it. Okay, Deb Nugent Stickley, go ahead and leave this. Put the rules up. I'll just see it in comments. I can only read like 2 lines at a time here. But here's what I wrote. Asghar Farhadi had it read for him by the woman named Anusha Ansari. He wrote, my absence is out of respect for the people, blah, blah, blah. Now, he's been very quiet, as I mentioned, about all the countries, including his, that ban Jews or anyone merely with Israel on their passport from entering, I wrote, Crimea River. Let me guess, no so-calling out to people's consciences, Hollywood brats have anything to say about that, about all the rules about entering the country if you've even been to Israel. So I wrote, F that you know what I mean, and I didn't spell it out because I'm polite like that, but you know what I mean. Noah Pollack, who is involved, I think he's close with Bill Kristol, but, you know, he had a good tweet. So a guy from Iran just lectured America about human rights and democracy to lusty applause from Hollywood. Just perfect. Meanwhile, last night, Gateway Pundit Jim Hoft wasn't writing too much about the Oscars, but he did add this. And this headline is very appropriate, or very apropos, or very ironic, actually. It was this. Iranian Revolutionary Guards commander admits to having terror cells situated and ready to strike in the U.S. More commentary on Oscars night. We're almost done soon. The Academy president is Cheryl Boone Isaac's a black woman, and she wrote, she said, tonight is proof that art has no borders. About that, I love this tweet in response by a woman named Cynthia Yaki. It said, regarding whether art has no borders, is this an announcement Hollywood is renouncing copyright laws? Very well done. I like this tweet as well. You know, Lindsay Lohan, wild child, but now she's becoming a devout Muslim, or at least complaining about being profiled in airports because she's wearing something over her head. not really related to what we're talking about, but I liked it. If Lindsay Lohan hadn't driven so many cars into so many things, she would have been Emma Stone tonight. A couple more comments on Facebook, then we're moving on to another topic. Kelly D.V. Heslip, who is a Facebook friend of mine, wrote this after a heartening discussion at a socialite dinner in Raleigh this evening. It's heartening that people are beginning to finally wake up to the media and the, well, perhaps what some might say is the New World Order behind them. From people I met that come from Honduras to Germany, they're actually beginning to see, well, I'm sure they're really beginning to see in Germany right now based on conditions that were there, but they are actually beginning to see Trump has meant what he says and they are liking it. Long live Israel and our U.S. Someone named Chaz Freed wrote, more bluntly, they can ingest fecal matter and expire. And someone named Adrienne Ormsby Pereira wrote, that's why I didn't waste my time watching it this year. The Oscars used to be wonderful, now it's a joke. And Gil Viator, who's my correspondent in the Lake Havasu City, Arizona Bureau of Adam Taxin's Midday Report, he wrote, has no borders, yet requires a ticket to get inside. But wait, there's more. You have to go through security, too. Irony's so rich, you gotta wonder if there are mineral rights. A few more comments. This one's very good and related to Hollywood's history. Can you imagine Kimmel meeting Clark Gable, Bogart, Stewart, or John Wayne? Well, especially John Wayne. I can't either. To which people respond, I'd like to meet the back-shooting little sissy, meaning Kimmel. And someone also wrote, if that happened, then Kimmel would just be the gopher, what he should be even now. All right. Moral. Oh, Diamond and Silk tweeted, the closest thing to an Oscar that Diamond and Silk plan to look at is a hot dog, which is, the shape of the Oscar, while we are eating it. Choo-choo, baby. Hashtag choo-choo, baby. And then some comments about none of the late night freak shows can hold a candle to Johnny Carson talking about Jimmy Kimmel. And then talk about someone else wrote, why waste 1 second on a show where overpaid perverts wear their outfits, they're paid to wear them, and they're trying to see who wears the least amount of clothes, showing their paid-for breasts and various other plastic surgery. Okay, one last thing. Keith Levenberg, who I even did a video with last week when we were both in Tampa, he has this, just something to think about, thought-provoking. You may have to rewind a little bit and listen to it again to make sense of it, but I think it's pretty profound. He quotes Daniel J. Boorstin, a historian, his piece called, or I guess a book called The Image, A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America. And again, please put comments in here, converse about this. Boorstin writes, in America today, heroes, like fairy tales, are seldom for sophisticated adults. But we multiply our Oscars and Emmys, our awards for Father of the Year, our crowns for Mrs. America and Miss Photo Flash. I guess this is a little dated. We have our Hall of Fame for great Americans, our Agricultural Hall of Fame, our Baseball Hall of Fame. We strain to restrain ourselves that we admire the admirable and honor the meritorious. But in the very act of straining, we confuse and distract ourselves. At first reluctantly, then with fascination, we observe the politicking behind every prize and shenanigans in front of every effort to enshrine a celebrity or to enthrone a queen for a day. Despite our best intentions, our contrivance to provide substitute heroes finally produces nothing but celebrities. To publicize is to expose. Again, fine with me if you hit pause or rewind to make sense of that again. Moving on to Europe, to Nora Tillman, very smart woman, big part of the Dublin, Ireland Jewish community. I know her from Philadelphia. She is writing about, she wrote that everyone overnight in the UK-Ireland news cycle was clouded by the Oscars. She writes, yawn. But there was an incident of a cloud driving into a crowd in London. Now, you heard about that in New Orleans, Mardi Gras, on Saturday, late afternoon, early evening. Seems like that might have been a drunk driver, which is very believable, given what you see in New Orleans, where I just was. But a car drove into a crowd in London. 5 people were injured. This was Southeast London. I don't know much about Southeast London compared to other places. Occurred around 8:20 a.m. on Sunday morning, not a time when people are typically drinking. It lost control and crashed into a group of pedestrians before hitting a wall. And it's suspiciously, she writes, like the one in Heidelberg, where a German man who was 73 years old died after a car was driven into pedestrians in Heidelberg. And the man who did it was being treated in the hospital, but he tried to escape and was shot by police, apparently. Now, the takeaway here, I'm not going to get into more details, But Nora editorializes that when, as we know, when they don't release the name of the suspect, you can guess it's because the Euro media are afraid you'll draw the wrong conclusions. When reading Euronews, it's important to look for what isn't being said. Just some Gateway Pundit headlines, actually from late afternoon yesterday till before sunrise. This is the one that really grabbed my attention, especially given that George W. Bush is talking trash about Trump today. I'm going to get to that in my Sunset Report. But just some background now. Barbara Pierce Bush is giving a speech in support of Planned Parenthood. Yep, that's true. The Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas has announced that Barbara Pierce Bush is going to be the keynote speaker for the 2017 annual luncheon. This is according to Planned Parenthood's website. Former President George W. Bush's daughter. She is interesting. Interesting title here. I don't know what her background is, her educational. I know she went to Yale, but did she go to med school? What's her expertise in? But keep this in mind. She is the CEO and co-founder of Global Health Corps, and in the mission and vision session of the GHC Global Health Corps website, it states that we believe that every person has the right to live a healthy, dignified life. That's interesting. Now, she's connected through Hillary Clinton to Cecile Richards, and, Planned Parenthood, of course, endorsed Hillary in the presidential election. We know about that. But interesting Orwellian words here. GHC, which, again, the younger Barbara Bush runs, it provides opportunities for young people to, quote, work on the front lines of the fight for global health equality, end quote, and offers paid fellowships for them with various so-called placement organizations, among them Planned Parenthood Global. Additionally, GHC, get this, has provided so-called placements at the Clinton Development Initiative, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and the Clinton Health Matters Initiative, all of which are part of the Clinton Foundation. The Bush family supporting Planned Parenthood is nothing new. Barbara Pierce Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, was, it seems, an active supporter of Planned Parenthood in its early days. And the eugenics is consistent with some other things. Prescott Bush, apparently, Barbara Pierce Bush's great-grandfather. Interesting. That's just interesting. Because some say the Bushes were a little tied to a certain political movement going on in Germany. What's up, Kenneth Hill? I already read your stuff. But Mother Jones has more about this. A leftist organization, a leftist publication, clearly not a fan of the Bushes, so I can actually take what they say here seriously. During the 1940s, when contraception was a controversial and largely taboo topic, Jeb Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, was an active supporter of Planned Parenthood, which was founded by Margaret Sanger in 1921 as the American Birth Control League. In 1947, Prescott Bush, served as treasurer of the group's first national fundraising campaign, a move he supposedly would soon come to regret. In 1950, he narrowly, I guess this is why he regretted it, he narrowly lost an election for a U.S. Senate seat in Connecticut after a columnist revealed his connection to the Birth Control Society. But he did go on to win a Senate seat 2 years later. More from Europe. We talked about what Nora Tillman had for me earlier. Marine Le Pen, tough woman. You go, girl. Marine Le Pen vows to remove France from totalitarian European Union. That's Jim Hoff's title over at the Gateway Pundit. And here's what Express.co wrote. Marine Le Pen branded the European Union, EU, a totalitarian institution and pledged to free a weakened France, that's her word, weakened, from the crippling burden of EU bureaucracy. She's laid out her foreign policy vision for France, and she has plans to reverse the EU bureaucracy, which has left France, quote, enfeebled and, quote, cut off from the world. She said yesterday in Paris, it's time for us to put an end to this bureaucratic monster that is the European Union. European countries are bound together in many ways, and this mandatory coalition is destroying individual member states. The far-right chief also vowed not to allow our country to be diminished, isolated, and wholly dependent on the EU. She warned the European Union is not the solution, it's the problem. And she's not happy about the so-called New Europe that EU nationalists are supposedly paving the way for. And then she added this. I am thrilled to see that Europeans are speaking out against the Union and calling for a Europe of nations. We will build a better Europe, whether Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Schultz like it or not. Now in Maryland, closer to home, in Carroll County, which is a comfortable, well, maybe an hour west of Maryland, depending on traffic. A Maryland high school there has taken a stand to end politics in the classroom so students can focus on learning without being indoctrinated by teachers. This is at Westminster High School in Carroll County. I guess it would be an exurb, maybe semi-rural. They were told, maybe that's near Frederick, Maryland. They were told to remove anti-Trump posters from their classrooms. That should be obvious enough. According to CBS Baltimore, these were We the People posters depicting Latina, Muslim, and African-American women in the same red, white, and blue style of the Hope election posters for Barack Obama. And the artist behind these diversity posters was Shepard Fairey, same guy who did the Obama posters that were, I guess, iconic. And he had told CNN in January that these three groups could be the most feeling that their needs would be neglected in a Trump administration. And they were there to, promote diversity. But they received complaints from parents. End of story. It's over. This one's a funny headline from Gateway Pundit. Black HuffPost writer horrified to learn she's white and not Native American. It's something called I celebrated Black History Month by finding out I was white. Almost sounds like an Onion headline, but this is someone named Christine Michael Carter, not to be confused with the backup running back named Christine Michael, who's, I guess, usually with the Seahawks. She is a little more questionable a title than backup running back. She's a millennial marketing strategist and hashtag millennial mom to hashtag Generation Alpha. So I guess she did a DNA test. Those things are a scam to begin with. And, especially if you're black, your ancestors have been here like 300 years. That's a lot of generations. And there was some mixing generally. You can look at your skin and figure out. And it wasn't usually by Native Americans. She found out that she was 67.2% Sub-Saharan African, European 31.5%, East Asian and Native American 0.6%. Yeah, you're not usually Native American. I don't know how that story gets started. It's usually Cherokee, but no, it's usually you're part white. And by the way, a lot of this came from the West Indies. You can research, some say it's not true, but from what I've seen, it's true. They mixed Irish women with African men there. The white Irish couldn't hack it that well. I guess the plantation owners back there, created this in the hopes that their investments would be better. I mean, black slaves were more on the market than Irish slaves, if I know correctly. But anyhow, back to Christine Michael Carter, she said that of all the emotions which materialized from the results, the two strongest were disorient and shame. And I often wonder how accurate these tests are, because in Europe, there was some fluidity among populations. How do you know you're Hungarian? At what point? I mean, I think they're a little bit of a scam. Especially, I'm Jewish, where if you go far enough back, Iraqi from Mesopotamia, before even being in Egypt, before there were Jewish people. But who knows? Everyone mixed, everyone moved around. There were no people in Europe for the most part 3,000 years ago, except for on the Mediterranean. So I don't know. That's another story. Other headlines, I'm just going to read the headline. OMG, human rights activist, that's in quotes, threatens to murder Le Pen, who I talked about before. So I am going to slit your throat Muslim style. But, oh wait, it's someone who is a rising media star in France, hailed as that, but he publishes the sickening tweets under the pseudonym Marcelin Deschamps, a provocative but fictional character who, according to the young writer, does not reflect his personal beliefs, values, and morals, just like John Stewart Leibowitz, just a comedian. That's enough about that one. A lawmaker is pushing to remove the Clintons' name from Little Rock's airport. By the way, it's the Bill and Hillary Clinton airport. I always thought that was particularly weird. What did Hillary do? She was a corporate lawyer at a law firm there. Why is her name on there? They're both alive, for heaven's sake. And she hated Arkansas. But this is by State Senator Jason Rapert. Interestingly, that someone, maybe it's Rappert, but the word raper, which is Bill Clinton, is in the guy's last name, Rapert. Interesting. Who knows if this will have any traction? Okay, he doesn't like Bill Clinton. And then this one, I'm going to end with this one. Chelsea Clinton, do I have something after this? No, I have more after this. A lot here. Chelsea Clinton tweets on outrageous birther attacks on Obama. is quickly reminded her mother launched the attack. I think that headline says it all. Mike Cernovich simply tweeted on this issue, "Your mom started the birther rumors." And then I'll add to that, mic drop. Okay, we don't need anything more than that. Just look at the history of who started the Obama birther thing. And like a lot of people, I believe Obama was born in the U.S., but Barack Obama Sr. isn't his father. Look at pictures of him compared to Frank Marshall Davis, and then look at him compared to Barack Obama Sr. Now I know there's a rumor out there that he's not even black. There's some Indonesian guy who does, I have to say, look like him, but I'm not going to go down that road right now. So Theo Voris is big on that. Facebook message, Theo Voris, Vouras, if you want more about that. Great comment from Lori Averick. There's an issue. CPAC end was Thursday through Sunday. The consensus is the enthusiasm wasn't there. Now, Gateway pundit Jim Hoft is reporting that a lot of the events were empty. Certainly, President Trump was not. There was a picture up there some are objecting to that showed a half-empty room, but any room can be half-empty for any event if you do it soon enough or late enough. But I don't know. Lori Averick writes, if you listen to Matt Schlapp, who's the head of CPAC and the American Conservative Union, CPAC stands for Conservative Political Action Conference, and some of the other attendees, you would think this was a wall-to-wall standing room event. Someone is in denial. I guess she means Matt Schlapp. I wasn't there. Lori wasn't there. Who knows? I got to get the real story here. But here's a piece I think you should Google by Mike Cernovich, who I just mentioned, a very good tweet by him. I think it summarizes well the just concluded CPAC. It's called Big Crowds, Low Energy, It's Time for a New Right. By Cernovich, so there is an element of self-promotion in the article, but he writes good stuff. You can just, I'll edit the self-promotion out for you. He says CPAC had large crowds and low energy. That's not necessarily the way he wrote it, a reference to Jev, it's just a term. He illustrates some interactions to prove his point. He writes, CPAC was a bore. I was there for a few hours on Friday. The hallways were mostly empty. There wasn't any music going on, and no one who was relevant was speaking or giving seminars. Imagine a panel discussion on new media and aggressive journalism with, instead, I added the word instead there, with Jim Hoft, Alex Jones, and Mike Cernovich. How much hype would a session on building a YouTube audience with Paul Joseph Watson and Stefan Molyneux? Those are guys you should really follow on Twitter. And Stefan Molyneux, who is a philosopher based in Canada, I think, he has a lot of really good in-depth interviews. I better spell his last name, Molyneux, I think. Cernovich wrote, he skipped CPAC on Saturday, and so did everyone else. The right, being more focused on individualism, lacks leaders who understand group dynamics and group energy. I agree with that completely. Take last night, for example, at the Reagan-Palooza, an unofficial after-party. Reagan-Palooza had everything you needed for a hype party. The well-attended crowd of 300 to 500 was mostly young and attractive. There were a couple of bar areas. The DJ was good enough for the job, and there was a large hallway and other side rooms available for people to talk. But, he writes, the event was flat. Imagine Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, or Stefan Molyneux, if they had entered the room. The entire energy would have changed. There'd be a commotion. And in contrast, this is what Mike Cernovich writes, instead of inviting the future of the movement, there were opening remarks by someone from the anti-Trump National Review who cheered the Gipper to a college-aged audience. I always hated the term the Gipper when Reagan would use it. I like Reagan, but the Gipper was always weird to me. I mean, you're not the Gipper. You weren't that good at football, okay? But it's just not for me. But someone from the anti-Trump National Review who cheered the Gipper to a college-aged audience. Dog the Bounty Hunter, is he really that big a deal? Gave a rambling toast while holding some sort of walking staff. Cernovich writes, CPAC is a microcosm for the GOP. There are parallel institutions. One structure includes the big money donors, the glass clickers, and the kiss-ups. The other structure includes social media stars, YouTube philosophers, that would be Stefan Molyneux, and Twitter troublemakers, that would be Mike Cernovich, and Jack Posobiec, who's not mentioned in that, but I like Jack Posobiec, so I want him in there. Celebrity is influenced, and we have our own celebrities. They won't be speaking tonight at the Oscars, but they will be doing millions of viewers per video. Maybe not millions, hundreds of thousands, I know how it works. Blah, blah, blah. Cernovich also writes, people attend CPAC because it's the only annual conservative conference. Someone with the ability to draw a large crowd and who gets what people want could outcompete CPAC in the free market. I agree. Just a few more pull quotes from that Cernovich piece. I'll give you the title of it again. It is Big Crowds, Low Energy. It's time for a new right. Mike Cernovich. Cernovich is Cernovich. There's a few more quotes from that. Go ahead and Google that. Conservatives like to complain about Hollywood, and yet no effort is made to build up our own stars. Well, follow the money. People are jealous. You know, you're a threat to their gravy train if someone new is on the block. You know that. He also writes that there is no difference between e-fame and real fame. I agree now. And he also talks a little bit, and I'm concluding now, about something that was held called the Bull Moose Party. It was held at Shelley's Back Room, a cigar bar in D.C. CPAC was at the National Harbor, which I think is in Maryland, and very hard to get to. The Bull Moose Party at Shelley's Back Room was organized by MAGA 3X, and this was the event to be at. Who was there? Cernovich was there. Michael Flynn Jr., who was very controversial. Obviously, Michael Flynn is no longer National Security Advisor. He was there. James O'Keefe stopped by. V.A. Shiva, that's a name you're going to hear a lot of. That is the very successful Indian-American entrepreneur who is challenging the fake other kind of Indian, Pocahontas. She's most known by that. Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. I also do like the names for the record. Sitting Bush. You can finish that one for yourself. I also like Taxin, Hiawatha, and especially hunts at Whole Foods. But Shiva, V.A. Shiva was there. That name will slip off the tip of my tongue soon enough. And the other guy who was there that they mentioned is Scott Greer. He is the author of a new book with a great title, No Campus for White Men. You don't even need me to explain it. You know exactly what must be talked about in that book. Anyhow, that's my midday report. Thank you for watching. I'll hopefully be back with a sunset report, maybe even with a sunset. Who knows? But thanks for watching. Comments very much appreciated. Starting a discussion based on what I say, very much appreciated. And suggestions to me how to get better at this. Yeah, I know about the technical aspects. I'm working on it. It's going to take several weeks. It's not my strength. But thank you for watching.